3%. That is all that is left. New Mexico's largest reservoir, the primary water supply for 3 million people, is almost completely gone. The Rio Grande, the fourth longest river in North America, a river that has been flowing for millions of years, ran completely dry in the summer of 2024. Not in one spot. Not for a mile. For more than 50 miles of cracked, dead riverbed. No water. Nothing. And most of the people who live along this river right now have no idea how bad it has already gotten. But here is the part that nobody is saying out loud. This is not just a drought. Scientists have a different word for what is happening, and that word means the crisis you are looking at right now may not be temporary. It may be permanent. A river that carved canyons through solid rock, that has survived ice ages and volcanic eruptions, is running out of water. And the backup plan that was supposed to prevent this? It just failed too. So what happens to 3 million people when the river they depend on is finally gone? Most people picture the Rio Grande as a line on a map. A border. The place where the United States ends and Mexico begins. And yes, it forms the entire 1,254-mile southern boundary of Texas, one of the most significant international boundaries in the Western Hemisphere. But that is not what makes this river matter. What makes the Rio Grande matter is what it carries. Water. Life-sustaining, irreplaceable, mathematically finite water. And for millions of people across 6 states and 2 nations, it is the only major river they have. The river begins in the San Juan Mountains of Colorado, more than 12,000 feet above sea level. Every spring, snow melts from those peaks and feeds the river below. That snowmelt becomes the drinking water for Albuquerque, the largest city in New Mexico, home to 600,000 people. It becomes the irrigation water that grows the cotton, the pecans, the green chile, and the onions that define the agricultural identity of the entire region. It flows south into Texas, crosses the border into Mexico, and feeds communities on the other side that have been legally promised their share since 1906. Colorado, New Mexico, Texas, and 4 Mexican states, Chihuahua, Coahuila, Nuevo León, and Tamaulipas, all depend on this single river. For every one of them, there is no alternative. No other major river. No backup. This is it. And at the center of the entire system sits one structure that was supposed to guarantee it all would work. Elephant Butte Reservoir, about 125 miles south of Albuquerque. Built between 1911 and 1916, it was the largest man-made reservoir in the world at the time of its completion. Engineers diverted the entire Rio Grande, excavated through solid rock, and erected a concrete gravity dam standing 301 feet tall. The reservoir it created stretched 40 miles behind it and held up to 2.19 million acre-feet of water. To picture that, 1 acre-foot is enough to cover a football field with a foot of water. At full capacity, Elephant Butte held enough water to bury the entire island of Manhattan under more than 60 feet of liquid. That was the plan. Store the water, release it slowly, make the desert bloom. And for decades, it worked. Farmers planted, cities grew, populations expanded. Every year the snowpack melted, the Rio Grande rose, and Elephant Butte filled back up. Not always to full, but enough. Enough for everyone to keep believing the system was sound. Today, that same reservoir is sitting at 3% capacity. And the river it was built to tame has started to disappear. The trouble did not arrive all at once. It crept in slowly, the way a bank account drains when you are spending just a little more than you are earning every single month. Easy to ignore, easy to explain away, until the balance is almost zero. Through the 1970s and the 1980s, the system held. Snowpack would build through winter, melt in spring, and the Rio Grande would rise. Elephant Butte would refill. not always to the brim, but enough to meet the demands of farms, cities, and the international treaty obligations waiting downstream. The desert was blooming exactly as the engineers had promised. Then the 1990s arrived, and the refills started coming up short. Some years the snowpack was lighter than expected. Other years, upstream users pulled more water than anticipated. The reservoir's annual recovery never quite reached where it needed to be. The trend was always there, a slow, quiet draining that was easy to dismiss as a bad year, and then another bad year, and then a pattern that nobody wanted to officially call a pattern. By 2013, Elephant Butte had dropped to roughly 3% of its capacity for the first time in modern memory. Scientists called it alarming. Engineers scrambled, emergency water managers held meetings. Then the rains came, not enough to be normal, but enough to pull the crisis off the front page. The reservoir crept back up. The headlines stopped. Crisis averted. Except it was not averted. It was postponed. And while everyone exhaled, nobody changed the math. That is the critical detail. The entire Rio Grande basin was already operating on a fundamental mismatch. The amount of water being legally promised to farms, cities, and international agreements was significantly more than the river was reliably delivering. The commitments were written when the river was stronger, the population had grown, the climate had shifted, and the gap between what was promised and what actually existed in the river was widening every single year, quietly, completely, with no serious plan to close it. By the end of 2024, Elephant Butte was below 3% again, but this time there were no rains coming to take the story off the front page, no temporary reprieve waiting on the horizon, and the backup system, the San Juan Chama project, an engineering tunnel drilled straight through the Continental Divide to pipe water in from the Colorado River Basin. When the Rio Grande fell short, hit a record low allocation in 2025 as well. The primary system was failing, the emergency reserve was failing, and the demand had never been higher. The backup plan needed a backup plan. There wasn't one. Picture yourself standing on the banks of the Rio Grande in the summer of 2024. Not near the headwaters in Colorado, not at the Texas border crossing. Somewhere in the middle, between Albuquerque and Elephant Butte Reservoir, in the stretch of river that is supposed to be the beating heart of New Mexico's water system. You are expecting to see water. What you see instead is dirt. Dry, cracked, gray-white riverbed baking in the high desert sun. Cottonwood trees standing brown and dead on the banks. Tall trees that only grow near permanent water, rising above a channel that contains absolutely nothing. No current, no trickle, no reflection of the sky. Just cracked mud where a river used to be. 50 miles. The Rio Grande ran completely dry for more than 50 miles. Not low, not shallow, not a trickle you could step across in rubber boots. Gone. And this is not something that is supposed to happen to a river of this size. The Rio Grande has been flowing for millions of years. It carved through the volcanic rock of New Mexico's high desert. It cut the Rio Grande Gorge, a canyon 800 feet deep, through solid basalt north of Taos. It shaped the entire geography of the American Southwest and northern Mexico. Last summer, it stopped. The science behind why is not complicated, even if the solutions are. Roughly 70% of the Rio Grande's annual flow comes from snowmelt in the Colorado Rockies and the mountains of northern New Mexico. When winters run warm and dry, the snowpack is thin. When spring arrives early, that snow melts too fast. Too much of it evaporates before it ever reaches the river channel. What should become July water becomes March vapor, gone into the atmosphere before anyone can capture it, store it, or use it. Now layer on top of that a system of legal obligations that was never designed for a river running this low. More than 1.5 million acres of farmland across Colorado, New Mexico, and Texas currently hold legal rights to pull water from this river. Add the municipal systems serving Albuquerque, El Paso, and Las Cruces. Add Mexico's guaranteed allotment under the 1906 treaty. What you have is a river that is legally obligated to deliver more water than currently exists inside it. In 2025, the Bureau of Reclamation made it official. Annual water allocations to irrigation districts fed by Elephant Butte were not reduced. They were cut to numbers that forced farmers to leave fields unplanted. Some districts received a zero allocation, not a reduced share. Zero. Fields that the same families have farmed for 4 generations are sitting empty this year, baking under the same sun that evaporated the river. To understand how 3 million people ended up legally dependent on a river that can no longer support them, you have to go back more than a century. Back to a time when Americans were building the Panama Canal, damming rivers across the continent, and operating with the absolute confidence that engineering could solve anything nature threw at them. It was an era of grand ambition, and the Rio Grande was next in line to be tamed. In 1906, the United States signed a treaty with Mexico promising 60,000 acre-feet of Rio Grande water every single year. Not when the river was high, not when conditions allowed. Every year, no matter what the river actually delivered that season. 2 years later, the legal framework for dividing the river between American states began taking shape, culminating in the Rio Grande Compact of 1938, which formally divided every drop of this river between Colorado, New Mexico, and Texas before the water had even finished falling from the mountains. This is the original sin of the Rio Grande crisis. The agreements made sense at the time, at least on paper. The early 20th century was built on the belief that rivers were problems to be engineered into submission. The Colorado River Compact of 1922 was doing the same thing to that river simultaneously, dividing water based on measurements taken during unusually wet years that turned out to be far above the long-term historical average. The Rio Grande Compact had the exact same flaw. It was written during relatively wet decades. It divided the water the river was delivering then, not what it would reliably deliver over the following century. Nobody built in a margin for prolonged drought. Nobody built in a margin for explosive population growth. And absolutely nobody built in a margin for a climate that would shift the entire baseline of what this river could produce. The people writing those agreements in 1906 and 1938 were not negligent. They were working with the data they had. The problem is that the data was wrong, and nobody ever went back to correct the promises that were built on top of it. Today, the Rio Grande Basin holds more than 6 million people on the United States side alone. Ciudad Juarez, directly across the border from El Paso, holds another 1.5 million. Every single one of them protected by legal agreements that assume a level of water flow that no longer exists. In 2023, New Mexico was ordered to pay Texas $144 million to settle a lawsuit over decades of water the state had failed to deliver downstream. $144 million from one American state to another over water. That is not a side effect of the crisis. That is the crisis showing its teeth before the worst has even arrived. There is a town in southern New Mexico called Hatch. Population about 1,700 people. Quiet, small, and by almost any measure, entirely unremarkable, except for one thing. If you have eaten green chili anywhere in the United States, on a burger, in a stew, roasted and peeled and laid over eggs on a Sunday morning, there is a very good chance it came from the Hatch Valley. This small stretch of Rio Grande floodplain north of El Paso grows more green chili per acre than anywhere else on Earth. The volcanic soil, the long growing season, the high desert sun, it is a combination that produces a flavor that farmers elsewhere have spent decades trying to replicate and have never quite managed. Every single acre of it runs on Rio Grande water, delivered through the Elephant Butte Irrigation District, one of the oldest water management systems in the American West. In 2024, That district received a water allocation roughly half of what a normal year should deliver. Farmers faced a brutal arithmetic: plant half your fields and hope, or plant nothing and wait. Many chose to let their fields go, standing empty in the summer heat, while the investment of a lifetime sat idle. The farm equipment did not run. The seasonal workers did not come. The restaurants, gas stations, and hardware stores that depend on a functioning agricultural economy watched their revenues collapse. One fourth-generation Chile farmer in the Hatch Valley put it simply, "We didn't lose a bad year. We lost everything we planted, everything we planned, and we still don't know what next year looks like." This is not a story happening to strangers somewhere far away. It is happening right now, this season, in towns that have been growing food for the American table for over 100 years. And Hatch is not alone. Albuquerque is navigating its own version of the same crisis. The city has invested heavily in aquifer storage and recovery systems, pumping water underground during wet years to pull back up in dry ones. Smart engineering, forward-thinking management. But that system depends on there being wet years, and there have not been many wet years lately. In 2025, the Rio Grande riverbed, running through the middle of New Mexico's largest city, has been dry since spring. A city of 600,000 people, a dry river running through its center. The University of New Mexico's Water Resources program has been direct about what this means. The state's water math no longer adds up. The primary river is failing. The emergency reserve is failing. Demand has never been higher. And the communities sitting at the end of the distribution lines are already living the consequences that the rest of the country has not yet been forced to face. Scientists have a word for what is happening in the American Southwest that matters more than the word drought. That word is aridification. And the difference between those two words is the difference between a bad season and a permanently altered world. Drought is temporary. Drought means there is a dry period, and eventually the rains return, the aquifers refill, and the reservoirs climb back toward normal. Drought is a deviation from the baseline. Aridification is a change in the baseline itself. The new normal is drier, and on the timescale of human civilization, that change is effectively permanent. This is not a cycle the Rio Grande Basin is moving through. This is the new condition it is moving into. The basin has warmed by approximately 2 degrees Fahrenheit over the past century. That might not sound like much. But in a desert ecosystem already operating at the absolute outer edge of what agriculture, what cities, and what human settlement can survive, 2 degrees reshapes everything. Higher temperatures mean more evaporation from the river's surface, from the soil, from the leaves of every plant the river supports. They mean the snowpack in the Colorado Rockies melts earlier in spring, before the river channel can capture it, before the soil can absorb it, before Elephant Butte can store it. The water that should be arriving in July is disappearing in March, not stolen, not mismanaged, evaporated before it ever had a chance to be used by anyone. A study of the Rio Grande's long-term flow found that the river's natural volume, independent of dams, independent of irrigation ditches, independent of any human withdrawal, has declined by more than 25% since 1980. 1/4 of the river's natural water, gone, not taken, not wasted, simply gone, lost to a warmer atmosphere that is now consuming water faster than the mountains can replace it. Now add on top of that a human demand that has not declined by 25%. In many years, it has increased. The Bureau of Reclamation has run climate models projecting Elephant Butte Reservoir's future capacity through 2050. The results are not reassuring. Under the middle range scenario, the one most climate scientists currently consider most likely, the reservoir could reach functionally empty status within 15 to 20 years. Not 3% capacity. Empty. A hole in the New Mexico desert that used to hold water and no longer does. When that happens, The consequences are not gradual. Farms without irrigation water do not slowly reduce production, they stop. Cities without their primary water source do not slowly cut back on usage. They face a crisis, and unlike a drought, there is no waiting for the other side of it. With aridification, this is the other side. When the water runs out in the American West, the fighting starts. And along the Rio Grande, the fighting has already been going on for more than 100 years. The 1944 water treaty between the United States and Mexico requires Mexico to deliver 350,000 acre-feet per year from Rio Grande tributaries back to the United States, primarily from rivers running through the state of Chihuahua. In recent years, Mexico has repeatedly fallen short of that obligation, not because of bad faith, but because Chihuahua is fighting its own water crisis. Farmers and communities in northern Mexico have protested violently against their own federal government, which they say is diverting water. Their families need to survive in order to meet international commitments made in Washington. On the American side, Texas farmers who depend on those Mexican water deliveries have demanded federal action. Congressional delegations have pushed hard. Diplomatic negotiations have produced nothing. The Rio Grande Compact of 1938 has been violated, disputed, reinterpreted, and litigated across multiple court cases over the past 80 years. The 2023 settlement that forced New Mexico to pay Texas $144 million resolved nothing fundamental. It financially compensated for the past, while the underlying problem, not enough water to go around, remained completely untouched. What is emerging along this river is not just an environmental crisis. It is a slow-motion conflict between states, between nations, between legal frameworks built for a world that no longer exists. The river does not care about the 19600 treaty. It does not care about the 1938 compact. It only has what it has, and what it has is shrinking. Here is where the story stands right now. Elephant Butte Reservoir is at 3% capacity. The Rio Grande ran dry for more than 50 miles in 2024. The backup water system is at record low allocation. The agriculture that has fed the American Southwest for a century is being forced off the land by the math of water that is no longer there. And the legal agreements that were supposed to guarantee everyone's share were written for a river that no longer exists. There are people working on this. Engineers in Albuquerque have built one of the most sophisticated urban water recycling systems in the country, treating municipal wastewater and injecting it back into the aquifer for later use. Farmers in the Hatch Valley are experimenting with drip irrigation systems that use 40% less water than traditional flood irrigation. Water managers are attempting to renegotiate compact terms that reflect the reality of a warming basin rather than the optimism of 1938. These things are real, they matter, but they are not enough to close the gap between what the Rio Grande can currently deliver and what 3 million people have been promised. The honest answer, the one water scientists will give you if you ask them directly, is that some communities will survive through painful adaptation, others will not. Water will flow to whoever can afford the legal battles and the infrastructure investments. The places that cannot, small farming towns, indigenous communities, lower-income neighborhoods at the end of the distribution lines, will be the first to go without. The river is still there, barely. And right now, we have not decided whether we are going to save it.